Hello everybody, Scotch By here, Gil McCritchie, and today we're going to be watching this video by Critical Drinker. It's just that, in recent years, people have been rather frustrated with modern Disney's approach at the way they sell their products, especially in the way they keep making remake after remake. You see, in the past, people were getting rather sick and tired of how the modern Disney company were practically running out of ideas, so they decided to rehash some of their other products from the past for the sake of nostalgia, but they don't really take much chances. I mean, not all of their remakes have been that terrible, mind you. I've enjoyed like some of them, but for the most part, there's just a lack of creative endeavor, especially when compared to their past. And now, people have been complaining that modern Disney movies have been getting far too politically involved, which has led to even more frustration. And this is where this YouTuber comes in. He's named The Critical Drinker. His real name is Will Jordan. He is Scottish, like me. He does have some vulgar language, I will not deny that, but he's very insightful about these values that people have held on to from past stories in the past, and he's done a great job using his intellect and his sense of humor to the flaws of the modern culture and trying to get people back to just telling good stories that'll bring people back to virtue. Now, he's not a perfect guy, but I endorse this guy because of what he's trying to bring people towards. So now he's reacting to Peter Pan and Wendy, which I've seen the trailer. It doesn't seem to so much because essentially I might explain this as we go along. And I've actually seen this video before. This remake seems to be ditching some of the probably unintentionally, but maybe intentionally, but they're ditching certain virtues and values that were quite nuanced from the original story and putting that out of the way, all for the sake of cramming modern politics down your throats, like, women are better than men, so much for gender equality, or, let's race swap these people so that we can be inclusive. I mean, that doesn't sound like a bad thing in itself, but the way they practice it, they say, aha, these other minorities must be superior, and the straight white men must be completely inferior and must be suppressed, which is ironically racist in and of itself. So this guy Will Jordan is pointing out those kind of flaws, and I'm just going to watch this video again because I really like his sense of humor. In some videos, he's very sarcastic. I know, like, me and sarcasm pretty much blend as well as, like, water and oil most of the time, but I really find his videos funny, so... And he gives some insight into what makes the original Peter Pan story so endearing as well, so let's watch it.
Another day, another Disney live-action remake of a beloved animated movie. Because as we all know, nothing says creativity and imagination like retelling the same story over and over again without having to take the risk of coming up with something new and unproven. And when it comes to milking... exploring old properties with strong followings and name recognition that guarantee good return on investment, Disney truly are the masters of the trades. First you had Beauty and the Beast, then you had Aladdin, then you had The Lion King, then Mulan. Well now, get ready for Peter Pan and Wendy, the classic children's story by Scottish author J.M. Barrie about a young British girl named Wendy who travels to the magical world of Neverland with the swashbuckling hero Peter Pan and his gang of lost boys, only this time updated for modern audiences. And it's
Modern
about time
audiences.
too. Sure, the original story might be widely regarded as a literary classic that reshaped the landscape of children's storytelling, sensitively dealing with complex ideas like the inevitability of aging and the loss of childish innocence, and the importance of ultimately moving on and growing up, but it's also deeply problematic, enforcing damaging stereotypes and outdated ideas that we just can't allow to exist these days.
To be fair, yeah, I've talked about this particular adaptation of Disney's Peter Pan with some friends in the past, and I'm not gonna lie, the portrayal of Native Americans in the in Disney's original Peter Pan film is embarrassingly outdated. I'm not gonna lie. So, on the one hand, I could at least understand why some attempts at like what modern people are trying to do, but there's been other Peter Pan adaptations before the modern propaganda that portrayed the Native Americans in a healthy way for the most part, I would say. I mean, as long as they promote the good virtues, that is. And as you can probably tell here, Driggers pointed out the nuances and the lessons that are learned from the original Peter Pan tale, and even from like Disney's adaptation. And these themes are further explored in the rather underappreciated straight to DVD sequel, Return to Neverland, even though that did have a theatrical release as well. But I actually think Return to Neverland is better than that original Disney Peter Pan film. And I actually really like the 2003 adaptation. But anyway, enough talk. Let's continue listening.
They must be removed at any cost. And if the recent trailer that got released is anything to go by, I'm confident that today's fine
like
script writers have done a fantastic job of fixing these problems. Like The Lost Boys, for example, which by their nature were sexist and exclusionary. Yeah, the origins of the Lost Boys in the novel were actually a subtle compliment to female intelligence and sensibility, since in the words of Peter Pan himself, the Lost Boys were babies who fell out of their prams, while girls were far too clever to let something like that happen to them.
Huh, there you go. So it seems that the original author in Peter Pan was kind of secretly respectful towards women, and as Drinker explains later, that's why they're so gravitated towards Wendy as a maternal figure, because these boys are like. That's actually a subtle compliment to women back in the day, but modern politics can't seem to understand this, as Drinker will point out. I mean, Return to Neverland was open to of like lost girls as well, but the modern political propaganda just takes it to the extreme. Anyway.
And all of this was tied into the overarching theme of Wendy, a girl, being a mature and steadying influence on the group, ultimately bringing them to the realization that they couldn't remain as children forever, and that it was time for them to go home and live full and complete lives at last. But of course, that kind of like the Lost Boys.
Whoops. I didn't mean to do that. There's a friend of mine named Malika Ganje. I haven't mentioned her on this channel before, but I might as well mention her now. She's brought up a topic in English literature called the Fae Realm, Faye. It was referring to this realm where you can have this sense of escapism and you'll find all this inspiration, imagination, but if you stay in the Fae Realm, you're never going to make any progress in the real world because you're in the escapist world. You're not making any real progress. The only way to make real progress is to step into that harsh reality and confront it and form grounded beliefs that improve your character, not just escapism or whether it be fantasy or nihilism or anything like that. So I find when Malika mentioned the Fae Realm, the first thing that came to mind was Neverland.
The Fae Realm, in the storybook sense, is a world that lies parallel to the physical realm. At times they may overlap, but usually they remain parallel to each other. This realm is filled with everything from wonder to complete nightmare fuel. It is the realm of shadows and possibilities from which chaos constantly flows. In real life, the Fae Realm is the collective dream of humanity. It is the pool of imagination into which we escape in order to find relief from the real world. Whereas in the story, a portal to the Fae Realm may be a fairy circle in the forest, but in real life, that portal will probably be a book or a movie or a mythological story.
I think Neverland perfectly captures this theme of the Fae Realm quite well, because it's a place where you can escape to and have fun, but you'll never make any progress in the real realm. And this is kind of signified symbolically in how nobody ever grows up in Neverland. And the adventures that boys get into seem to be quite circular and repetitive. But then here comes Wendy, promising some real change and growth in their lives. Of course, I mean, we've got heaven to look forward to. But there's a difference between the Fae Realm and heaven.
For them to go home and live full and complete lives at last. But of course, that kind of subtle exploration of the different perspectives and outlooks of boys and girls, particularly in a story with a female protagonist, is dangerous and damaging because we need to be constantly reminded that girls can punch and fight and do adventure stuff too. And what's so great about the trailer is that it manages to work this change into the plot in a subtle, elegant and organic way, rather than just trying to shove it in your face with some clumsy piece of dialogue.
You're not old boy. So?
Nailed it. But what about Peter Pan himself? Let's take a look at this classic roguish, mercurial adventurer for the modern age.
Were you expecting someone else?
Or how about Tinkerbell, the fairy who helps and guides Wendy, but also has an unrequited crush on Peter. Now, you might remember her from the 1950s animated movie, or the 1990s movie Hook, or the 2003 movie.
One of the better adaptations, along with Return to Neverland, I think.
Well, let's see how she's looking in 2023. Just like I remember. It really silences those critics who claim that modern Disney remakes are just lazy race and gender swaps of established characters in a vain attempt to pander to minorities, often disrespecting the cultural heritage of the source material. Take that, haters. Personally, I expect the objects of Tinkerbell's affections will turn out to be Wendy this time around, but maybe I'm just crazy. Actually, talking about Wendy, you might remember from the original literature and the animated movie that Wendy becomes a kind of maternal figure to Peter and the Lost Boys, helping to maintain their home and teach them manners and discipline that they lacked before. And that even though she got captured and had to be rescued by Peter, she represented something far more powerful even than him. The ability to leave behind the childish ignorance of Neverland and grow up, to make a real life for herself and become something more than she was. And that this ability is ultimately what helps the rest of the Lost Boys to leave Neverland behind and return to the real world with her. But that's not the kind of subtle thinking that we encourage in modern writing. Instead, we need to show Wendy as an ass-kicking, sword-fighting girl boss who can take on two of Captain Hook's pirates at the same time and fight almost as well as Peter himself. Because, as we all know,
Girls get it done.
honestly, I think this movie looks like a fantastic addition to the Disney Plus lineup, really honouring the legacy of one of their most iconic films from the classic era of animation. And if the stellar trailer reception is a good one, audiences are going to absolutely love it. And I can't wait to see it happen. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
So as you can tell, he's quite smart and quite funny. What's not to love about the guy? Yeah, just oddly enough, no vulgar language, so I guess I'm free to share that video. Like that, I like all of you. Have a nice day. Holy Trinity bless you all.